All right, there we go. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker-Carl, and I'm here with my good friends Dan and Catherine and Karen. And today we are continuing our discussion of Leonardo and Gabriel by Tim Tigner. And we we're moving on chapter entitled Jeffrey. The spelling of Jeffrey is different than what I'm familiar with, but we really didn't continue. We didn't really finish talking about all the different abilities from the last chapter. We kind of went off on our own thought processes, which is what we sometimes do. So we may talk about this chapter, or we may talk about the previous chapters, whatever we feel like talking about. So for those of you who are watching, feel free to leave us a comment below the video. Let us know your thoughts. If you'd like to join our conversation, jump over to our Facebook group. You can get there by going to mindsetmasterycollective.com, and of course there'll be a link below the video for that. I want to just give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then we can get talking about this book again.
Cool. I'm going to introduce myself first because I'll be talking pretty quickly again. I'm Karen Lohoff, and I am 70 years old now. And I'm telling you that because in case you're looking at the screen and saying, why is that one woman so ugly? Anyway, I'll give you a clue. I live in the East Valley of the Valley of the Sun, which is like in Phoenix, Arizona, kind of. I really live in what other people call Mesa. It's Mesa.
Good morning. This is Catherine Clement in Boulder, Colorado.
Good morning. Just in Las Vegas, Nevada, and just looking forward to hear what everybody has to share this morning. So let's get started.
All right, Karen, if you want to go ahead and take it away. Oh, and Catherine, I started typing to you. You sound a little bit low this morning. I don't know. Not sure why. Just to let you know. We can hear you, but it's low. You're muted, Karen.
Wow. I'm certainly glad I'm not in charge of this whole thing. I was saying she looks like an alien, doesn't she, with those aqua tinted glasses? I mean, definitely, you could only get by with wearing those in Colorado. Or maybe a place like Wyoming. Well, I was going to look for the chapter in my Kindle, and all I'm doing is going like this. Because I don't really know how to use my Kindle, like how to get home. I don't even know how to pull up that stuff. I usually honk around until those signs come up. And so what I'm going to say is the abilities in the chapter that we considered rushing off are pretty important abilities. They will come up through the whole rest of the book, and they'll come up in people as they think about God. So we have talked quite a bit about omniscience, and we still need to talk about omnipotence and omnipresence. Actually, I'm not sure now which one we have talked about because I'm a little befuddled. But so I'm going to suggest we talk about those first, but that's only a suggestion. Anyone who views these videotapes will know that we just basically do what we damn well please. So we'll just go from there, and I'll turn it back over to the rest of you for a moment.
Oh, we lose Catherine? I guess we did. She'll jump back on. Maybe she's going to jump out and jump back in again. Last week we started talking about the different abilities that were suggested in that chapter. because of course Gabriel and Leonardo are having this conversation, and they're like, okay, well, let's define God, and from a clean slate, let's talk about what are the defining characteristics of God, basically. And they were like starting with his abilities, and so they were listing those off. Well, when when we got to talking about these definitions of God, we then kind of veered off into this conversation, which was like, wait a second, where do these definitions even come from? And and so then we got to talking about how, realistically, if we look back in the history of the history of the history of everything, we realize that these definitions have come from man, and and because of that, we can question them. Are they, is that really a true definition of God? I mean, all of our perceptions are human, and so therefore, these abilities or these characteristics are man-made definitions of what we think God might be, or are just definition of what what is God in general. And so that's kind of where we veered off last week. We talked about that. But today, I feel like, okay, well, we can take these definitions and go, okay, well, let's just kind of discuss each one of these and our ideas about them, and maybe where um, maybe we can kind of dive into, okay, well, where did that idea come from, or what makes everybody think that, or I don't know, something along that lines. Um, but basically, they came up with their first three abilities was that omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresent. And so let's see. Omnipotent. What does that mean? Or what was that? What was the definition of that one? Sorry, I have to look it up because I'm like, oh, these big words. I know that sounds silly, but um, anybody have it? Where is that definition in here? Omnipotent. All-knowing. Is that the all-knowing one? Trying to find it.
Yeah. I
I
was
think
gonna
it
jump out
is.
and throw in a yeah. I, I was gonna throw a thought in while you were kind of trying to get your thought there.
Yeah.
To me, going to like where we get the definitions, and I guess you're right, because they are man-made, because we have our mind to work with, and our minds are so finite compared to, for the most part, finite compared to what it is all out there. Some people are, I believe, are more blessed or have the ability, such as Catherine has certain abilities to interact and uh, get some insight that's more than what others are in tune to. I believe that I fully don't understand all the things about what I believe about God, and that it's hard for me in my mind to be able to fully comprehend and fathom all the facets of what God's about, because of how my human brain it is made, and how limited, even though we have, and the fact that they say we only use about 10% of our brain's power and capabilities, that you know is what's blocking that other part of it from us being able to tap into a lot of the other parts of the capabilities of our brains. And why are some people able to tap into some of that and some of us not? And I think that's why we do have the types of definitions of what God is like. Um, and it's because of those things. And I wish I could say more about what, you know, I have my thoughts and my ideas on, what omnipresent, omniscient, all that is. But I think that's where, if you kind of look at it and start, that's where we kind of have to start and move forward from there.
Yeah, we also kind of talked about that aspect, Dan, of the fact that as humans we're limited in our ability in our own um, ability to know everything, obviously, because we're in the human capacity. And so I think it was Catherine, you brought up the veil, like the, was it, I can't remember if you were the one that mentioned that, but like the body or the human experience being the veil between us and God. Oh, my granddaughter talking to me, so I'm going to have to jump off for a second.
Yeah, that was Karen that brought that up, but I agreed with her that the body is the veil, and maybe part of that, inability to access the other 90% of the brain, maybe that's the veil. I don't know. And maybe people like me who seem to have some kind of extra perception, maybe that's just a little bit more of my brain that is at my disposal or something. I mean, I don't know. I just know that some people, you know, like, for instance, I'm guessing that this book was in some aspect channeled to the author. I think a lot of books are. Um, you can kind of tell when you're reading a book whether it's just that person's own thoughts or whether that information has come from elsewhere. And I think a lot of the information that's available out there is coming from somewhere else, and I can't tell you where it's coming from. I have no idea, but I know that people just get what they call inspired, what I call channeled. So it's a different use of words, but um, and then sometimes you can read something or hear somebody lecture and they think that they are the genius that thought it all up when it's quite obvious to anybody else that that information came from elsewhere.
That's why I have such an appreciation for you because of some of your insights and what you share with us, Catherine. Because of, I think you're um, with you know um, I don't know how to explain it. What's beyond, I guess, so to speak. Because I think I connect it in a different way, but I think you have a more deeper and enlightened connection. And when you share your insights, I love it because it helps me gain a better insight myself. So I think in those abilities, some people are just, as I call it, gifted and blessed with that as a way to help give others insights that maybe aren't ready for, or to help guide them and get them to where they can be more open or more ready to have that more, to me, intimate uh, relationship, for lack of a better word, with God or the universe or infinite intelligence, however you want to call it. I think that's part of the design is to, because maybe the reason why we can't access the other 90% is because not all of us are fully ready to go there either, too, and that maybe why we have such a hard time defining those aspects or abilities, or for lack of a better word, put God in the box that we still want to put him in, but he's not containable in the box. Whereas we kind of are. We can look at each other. We can see our abilities. We can see the depths and the lengths and how far we can go. And there's so much more to that than what we're able to fathom. And I think that's what I struggle with sometimes.
Well, that was pretty neat that you brought up that we have this desire to contain God within a box, and we don't really have the ability to do that. There were a couple of things that Sam said that really got me kind of in a new place with the idea of omniscience. Catherine is currently driving, people to and from. I drove probably now, it's close to 10, 11, 12 years ago, I drove taxi, like regular taxi. They didn't have Uber, they didn't have Lyft, they didn't have any of these things. And I actually drove kind of a local taxi that was just all over the place. Somebody who was really, really greedy and managed to just build the whole thing up. I started with him, and then I went to a company that was out of Chicago that you may or may not have heard of, VIP Taxi. And we were just kind of starting into the era where they had video cameras. And I know now that they must have video cameras on every taxi. I think every taxi I've gotten into lately. In fact, the most recent taxi I got into that had 3 video cameras. And I got to where I was pretty aware that I was being watched all the time, that I was in the cab. And it's not like people had time to watch all those videos, or that somebody was sitting on the other side of the video and watching the video. But I went to take someone to the Indian reservation. It was a couple, to one of the 5 Indian reservations that's around the valley. And it was after dark time, and so it was between 2 and 3 in the morning. And one of their intersections, and you have to picture an Indian reservation. We're talking about dirt roads. We're talking about little squatty stop signs, and very dark. I mean, on an Indian reservation, it is dark. When it's dark, it's dark. And so fortunately, my headlights did catch the stop sign. I had stopped at the stop sign, and I knew that I had done full stop, and I was ready to turn left. And I don't know. I don't remember the part about there must have been headlights coming towards me, and I must have assumed, which would be really dumb for me, because after bar time, especially in that particular environment, people who drive aren't necessarily conscious. But I was taking a left turn. I was right out in the center of the intersection. I got hit by another car, and it wasn't bad. I mean, it was just my tail. I was in a Prius because we were using Priuses with that company, and I don't think the car was hurt. But of course, we had to stop. The car that I was driving, the natives decided to go ahead and walk home, and mainly because the woman had peed in the back seat because of the accident, and she was embarrassed, and she was mad at me because I was a white woman, and well, I don't know, she might have had other things she was mad at me about, but anyway, I walked back to the other car, and lo and behold, in the other car was a young girl, she was probably here to go to ASU. I don't know, but she was like that student age. The weird thing, she was on a native Indian reservation, and she was from India, the country. And she's sitting there crying, and she's really pretty and really thin and really bejeweled, And she's sitting there crying because here she is in America. She could be exported, I imagine. And I'm trying to comfort her, and the police that come are the native police, who of course are not particularly in sympathy with a white woman. But it really, when it kind of played itself out, it really taught me, if you're on camera, you better be thinking about being on camera. Criminals should be thinking about being on video. When they're their stuff. They really should think about it. And I'm just wondering if humans didn't get to a place where they noticed, that they felt like they were being watched when nobody was around. And they attributed to God this characteristic of being omniscient. And I also know that when my friends have passed, in particular, if a male friend of mine, who I never dated, we were just seriously friends, came and sat in the bathtub on the other side of half wall while I'm sitting on the toilet, and no talking, no visual, but I just felt that he was there, and I'm thinking, I do go other places in here. You could visit me somewhere else other than the bathroom, and we haven't gone into the bathroom together before. So what are you doing? I mean, I was laughing the whole time. I thought it was pretty funny, but he basically left me with the impression that we had talked about debts that we owed, and he would appreciate it if I would repay his debt, because I would understand that. And so I did think a lot about people who had passed and who was watching me, and who was watching me where. When I was in the bathroom, when I was, I won't go into the rest of it. So that was one idea that I had, and the other was that I have recently. We all see that. Just a second, Kara, are you hearing this other noise? Anybody hearing this other noise? Yeah, I'll mute out and tell that other idea later.
So, unlike what you're talking about with the idea of thinking that we're being watched or heard or seen or any number of things like that. And it's weird. When I was at the camper, and there was a period of time where my husband was over in New Orleans, and so that was a few weeks where I was pretty much by myself, other than just with my dog. And but it was interesting because I would have little random experiences where I'm sitting there, all the shades are closed on my camper because it's nighttime, but I would feel like there's another presence there, and other than my dog. And so I think that's very interesting that you bring that aspect up. But another thing that popped up into my head is not just that, but maybe it was parents teaching their kids that, okay, you better straighten up because you're being watched by the boogeyman. We use the boogeyman thing, in this day and age. Who knows what they used way back when? It might have been, you better watch out. That tiger out there might get you. I don't know. And so then we kind of started to get this idea that, we're always being watched by something. We're prey to something, I don't know. But it's a fear thing, right? Dan, you were talking about fear of knowing also, or I don't know if you use the words fear necessarily, but what are you trying to do, Bailey? You can't open the door. It's cold outside. Don't try and open the door. But the fear aspect of knowing what the real truth is. Of course, we have the veil of being in the human experience, and then maybe we don't really want to know what the truth is. And I think that a lot of people do kind of keep that tunnel vision on of this is my religion, this is what I believe, this is da-da-da. Because I'm afraid it might be true and it might be something else that is the truth and I won't like it. That kind of a thing. So that's an aspect. But I've also, in my own experience, talk about other abilities like what Catherine has, that she hears people talk to her, and and she has other connections with things outside of the general human experience. And I feel like when I was younger, I knew more. Is that kind of like a knowing more not in my mind, but feeling like I experienced more. And some of it scared me. And so I feel as I grew older, I kind of turned off, not on purpose, but turned a blind eye in my mind, in my inner mind, if you will, to certain things. And and one of those things is what we would might define as ghosts or spirits or something along that line. And because I have this kind of feeling sometimes where I'm like, if I just open the right eye in my mind, I would see something I may not like what is that I would see. And it scares me. And so therefore I'm like, I'm not going to see it. Whether that's conscious, unconscious, or a combination of both, I really don't know. And, um, and maybe we all have some level of experience like that. I really don't know. But,
Yeah, I was gonna jump out and say I'm kind of like you. I've had those times where I've been home alone, just in my normal stuff, and all of a sudden this feeling of, and it always seems like over one certain spot, one area, I get the feeling like from one little area, I feel like somebody's watching me, and I'll look over there, and it's almost like I see a little of a shadow, but it's not even a shadow. If you can understand what I'm getting at, it's just and I kind of get a cold feeling, and it's just like not the most comfortable feeling. But yeah, maybe if I, like you said, maybe if it would be more open a doorway even more to be more interactive, kind of like Catherine is on certain levels of things, to be able to, you know, have some insights or inspiration or things to that could warm me or better plan me. Thing is, I've had a couple times where a certain smell has come, and I can't even really describe the smell. I would know it if I smell it again, but I can't really describe it to anybody. That's the problem. I can't really say, oh, it smells exactly like this, or I know what it smells like, but there's no way in hell I can explain it to somebody else. It's been the other thing I've kind of once or twice in my lifetime I've had that happen, and maybe that's another conduit way of how you open up more or something, or open that third eye or whatever they call it, to some of the realms that we have access to, but we kind of, like you said, shut ourselves off to because maybe we don't really want to know. We want to know, but really deep down, really we don't want to know everything and all that's going on out there, because we probably really would not like it, or we might not understand it. I think we wouldn't understand it fully. Was where I go. It's like, okay, all this is happening, and I don't know why, and the reasons behind all of it. And I would be more the type. I want to know why all this is going on. So I think that's part of the reason why, as much as I want to be connected in that realm, I don't connect.
I think that happens a lot. Children are much more open. Um, then something will happen that scares you, and you wind up closing off some of your abilities. Or even now, I close off many of my abilities because I don't want to be awake all night talking to dead people. I really don't. Like, I work 7 days a week. I'm tired. I need to sleep. And still they wake me up in the middle of the night, quite often. So I think it's very, very common for children to be told, "Oh, your imagination," or you're making things up, you're lying. All of those things lead to shutting down abilities. And I think you can open them back up, but you are in control, and that's something to remember. if you do want to open up a little bit, but you don't want to open up all the way, that is a possibility. Although sometimes you get messages that are really persistent, or they're just so loud and so blatant that it's not like you can turn it off because it's just there in your face. But I think that the horror movie industry has really done a disservice to the other side. Like, it's really made us so afraid and so petrified of spirit contact, and it's a shame because there's a lot to learn from the other side, and there's a lot of guidance and support that can be received from the other side. But if you're just petrified of it because you watch some horror film, like The Exorcist or whatever. Now, I have had, objects fly off the wall and things like that, but it was a attention-seeking behavior, I'm going to call it. Yeah, like, I'm here, why aren't you listening to me, kind of thing. It wasn't a demonic, I'm going to kill you by throwing this thing off the wall at you experience. Now, I can't say that people haven't experienced things like that because I'm not them and I don't know. But what I can say is that fear plays a huge role in those type of experiences. And the more fearful you are, if something flies off the wall and you immediately think a demon is in your house trying to kill you, you can almost invite such experiences by thinking that way, but it's all fear-based. If you just look at it, like I do, oh, you're trying to get my attention, okay, what is it? Then they don't have to throw things around anymore, because they got your attention.
Well, and another thing I feel like helps us, or not helps us, that has encouraged us to close some of that off, at least in my experience, being raised in a Christian school where anything related to anything outside of Jesus and the Bible is something that is evil. And so therefore you should have nothing to do with it. You shouldn't pay attention to it. You need to not get led away to the evil side by it. And, and if you think you're seeing this or that or the other ghosts or anything along that lines, you should be afraid of it because it's evil. And, that was what I was taught. And, it's like, for instance, when I was a kid, like teenager, the fun thing to do was play with a Ouija board. And, and I had some little experiences like that. But I always had this nagging, oh, I shouldn't be doing this because it's evil. And, I'm inviting, the devil into my life, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to burn in hell. And, that was what we were taught. And that if we participated in anything like that, we were going to be in deep, deep trouble. So I think that's another thing that, that gets into our subconscious and tells us that, we shouldn't be seeing these things because it's going to lead us astray. So, or they're trying to trick us into whatever.
Which is in a way hilarious since they speak of the Holy Ghost so much, right?
That is
Contradiction.
That's a really good line. That's great. The second thing that I was going to mention earlier about omniscience is, I'm sure we've all seen a picture of the conscious mind, the unconscious mind or the subconscious mind as an iceberg. And on top of the water, it's really quite a small little cone. And below the water level, it is just this mammoth thing that you cannot get around, get under, get by, whatever. And I don't know what made the difference for me, but the last time I looked at that, for whatever reason, I thought of um, how disassociated most of us are from our subconscious mind, and how much of us really probably like to stay away from it. Just like we want to stay away from the dead, we want to stay away from the devil, we want to stay away from whatever. We don't. We kind of think, wouldn't it be nice if I knew what's in my subconscious mind, and I knew about this experience, the first experience I had with the boy that was titillating, or the first time that I thought X memory of my father, or and then when it comes to meeting someone who claims to have the ability to take you by hand, help you get into your own subconscious, kind of aware of what's there, what memories you have, and open that self-conscious where it rises up, it floats up more, so that it becomes more conscious, and possibly one day the conscious part of your mind becomes not 10%, it becomes 90%. I just thought that was an interesting consideration regarding omniscience.
Yeah, and then we get back into the fear thing again, right? I was just sitting here as you were saying that. I'm sitting here going, most people can't even stand alone with themselves long enough to hear anything in their mind. They fill that void every time there's a moment of silence, or they either try to fill it up with television or radio, just their phone, Facebook, whatever it is. They're just constantly trying to fill up that quiet with something else, so they don't have to hear what feelings, etc. Yeah. I just want to mention that I started a little bit late. I can go however long, but I just want to let you know anybody that needs to jump off. Just
Um, I was going to say, based on what you just saying, it's interesting over the last maybe 2, 3, 4 months or so. It's been weird. A lot of times, like when I come home, if nobody's here, if I'm not here or something like that, there have been times where I come in and I don't turn on the TV, I don't turn on the radio, I don't turn on anything. I'll start doing my cleaning and my housework and stuff. But I just want the quiet. I just don't want, like, because at work I have a lot of stuff going on and things constant. I hate to say the drama going on there and other things. And when I'm, like, I can't understand that. Okay, I've been nice, friendly, trying to be talkative, and that doesn't bother me. But there are times where, okay, I've been talking all day, I've been listening to all day, I've been, I just want quiet and just even if I'm in my own thoughts. So sometimes that's been nice, and I really have clamored and wanted that a lot more lately, because then it does give me a little bit of time to kind of go inward a little bit and look at some of the feelings and some of the things I'm dealing with. And granted, sometimes it brings up feelings and emotions and things and stuff like that. And then I'm like, okay, why did I do that? But it's been a good thing, because it's, I'm not distracting myself either. So it's been interesting how that's been kind of happening for me lately a little bit more and more. Like even last night, I got home, my roommate was not here, him and his dog were out. I came in and I started doing a couple things, getting ready. Oh, excuse me, making dinner and stuff. And I was like, okay. And I actually even said to myself, I hope you do not come home for a little while. I just want some time to myself. And about 5 minutes later, they walked up and came in and came back home. Like, really, the one time I really would like to have just some, you know. So, but I think you're on something there. I think most of the time we feel ourselves and are so busy and try to keep so much going on to distract ourselves from ourselves and our own minds, our own thoughts, and our own things. And sometimes maybe if we go inward, we can get some answers by going inward that we can't get from being out here either.
So just out of curiosity, which one is all-knowing, omnipotent, or whichever one it is? I just have a question for the panel. Have you ever been asked a question or asked all-knowing? Have you ever been asked a question or asked yourself a question that you did not know the answer to, but the answer came to you? Karen, I see you shaking your head. Sam's off camera. Dan's in thought. Like, and I'm just going to give a really simple example. Let's say that you're sitting outside, it's a sunny day, and you see this pretty little bird in the tree, and you think, oh, that's a pretty little bird. I wonder what kind of bird that is. You have no idea what kind of bird that is, but suddenly in your mind pops starling or whatever another name of a bird is. Like, that has happened to me so many times. I feel like we are all knowing in some aspects. So, but is God, I mean, how could God be all knowing? That is a good question. Are they, and I say they when I refer to God more than he or she, but, are they watching everything little, because I worried about that too, Karen, and sometimes I still get self-conscious of it. I'm sitting on the toilet and I'm thinking, okay, who's watching me do this? and it's unnerving, but I have to believe that they're aware of everything going on. I don't think they're like focused on us going to sit on the toilet. They have other things to focus on. But when I need help, when I need assistance, they appear to be there for me. So I have to believe that they're aware of everything going on. Now, is the response always the one that I want, that I get from them? Absolutely not. And I attribute that to just not really knowing what is best for me. And I attribute that to not fully remembering the plan that I made before I came into this life. And that is talked a lot about in the book, another book that I suggested that we do here on this panel, because I believe the only way that it makes sense to me, because of all the tragedy, quote, perceived tragedy, I'm going to requote that, perceived tragedies in the world and the suffering. I don't see how any God with any love whatsoever for its creations could watch all that unless there was purpose behind it. I just cannot, I just can't believe that. Like, I can watch my children suffer a little bit if I know that it's going to help them in their life in the long run. What I can't stand for is just perceived unnecessary suffering. And so I think that the only way that I can stay sane and content to stay in this world is to believe that the pain and suffering that I witness and the perceived inequalities that I witness, that they're there for a very specific reason. And I think that came through really strong to me during my incident, which I've talked about before, where I was raped. I was out of body watching it going on, and I was told there was no judgment against what was happening. that was happening for a reason, and it did. It completely changed my life. I do believe that the man that did that, the suffering that he felt afterwards, like the guilt and the suffering that he went through afterwards, that played a purpose. Like there was purpose throughout all of that. And I think in every perceived inequality or suffering, I think that aspect is there. We just don't remember it. I believe we read to it before we can experience it. And that is the only thing that makes sense to me at this point. Now, tomorrow, I'd have a completely different reality, and maybe see it from a different light. But I do hope that book does wind up, on our reading list here, because it, whether it's true or not, I mean, and I've said this before, we can believe whatever we want to believe. I choose to believe things that make me more happy, more content, and more at ease, as opposed to less.
Like what you said there is that you choose to believe what makes you feel happier. And, I think that if people realize that, they can choose to think the thing that, makes them feel better, then then things would be easier for a lot of people, because I think we get so focused on the negative stuff. And it's not, I'm not just pointing fingers at other people. I do it to myself all the time, where I just get so stuck in this rut of just can't stop thinking about anything except for this crap that frustrates me. And, but we can choose, what we're believing, um, so that we can feel the comfort that we need to feel from that. And I think that's important. Catherine, what was the name of that book again? I know that you've mentioned it before. Did you just mention it and I just didn't hear you because my dog was barking?
Well, there's a couple of different books. One is Your Soul's Purpose, I think. I'll look them up and put them in the chat, because there's a few of them that have been written by the same person, and it's done through, a lot of this stuff is verified through psychics and mediums and stuff who are connecting, and they're spoken to separately, yet they come up with the same answers. So I just found it very interesting, and I've always kind of had that idea, but I had never seen it in print before, and so it was, to me, just like a bit of a confirmation on some feelings I had already had, and just how experiences have played out in my life, how it felt. Because if God were the judgmental, you're going to hell forever person that has been taught to me, instead of the conversation that Jesus and I had about how there's no judgment here, it would have been a conversation of, oh, don't you worry, honey, he's going to burn in hell forever for this shit. Like, seriously? Yeah, it would have been a completely different conversation, right? So, but I think it's your soul's plan or your soul's purpose, or something like that. I'll get them in the chat.
I remember in one of our previous books that we talked about, it wasn't the book that we were talking about at the time, but I was reading a book by Wayne Dyer on the side, and I think that we kind of touched on that same conversation of this agreement before we come here, and he had suggested that in one of his books, and I can't remember which one it was, but he was talking about the experiences in his life that were relating to his father. And his father passed away at some point, and then he went to his father's grave, and while he was there, he kind of came to this realization that, or this possible scenario, that maybe before they came here, his father agreed to be this drunk asshole so that Wayne Dyer could have the experience that he wanted. It's like we before we come here, we say, this is the experience I want to have, and then those that are around us all are like, okay, well, I'll be the drunk guy, you can be the whore, you can be the evil person, you can be the great gay best friend, you can be this, you can do that, and then we'll all go there and we'll do this thing. But we won't remember this conversation because that's part of the experience. And but there's no judgment because it's just a game, or this is what we go there to experience so that we can have this experience and bring back this wisdom to this other plane that we, exist in. And of course, I've kind of like melded it all around thinking, boy, maybe this is just a big video game, virtual reality video game that we're all playing in. And we've all agreed that we're going to play these different roles, and we're just over here having fun. We just don't know it, I don't know. But but that was something that came up when you were just talking about that, agreeing beforehand, and that's possible. I know last week we talked on.
Somebody has to be the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
Somebody has to. But does that mean that they should be judged for it? No, because they're volunteering to do it to further your spiritual understanding.
Right. Well, and just like, in movies, the actors aren't really those characters. They're just acting, And who's to say that we aren't doing the exact same thing? We just don't know it. And maybe we're doing it because we want to gain some further wisdom. Maybe we're just doing it simply for the experience of doing it. If we are, in fact, some other being that is outside the realm of human experience, and we want to experience the human experience and all that it's about. That's what being a human is. All this stuff that's happening that we see, that we hear, we taste, we smell, we see, we understand, don't understand the mystery of it, all the insanity that's going on in the universe that we experience as a human. That's all the human experience, right? Maybe we are some other being, and we just want to try out this human experience, and this is what it's all about. And we just stepped into, who knows? I don't. It's possible. Nothing's impossible. I don't know. Okay, I'm done.
I'd like to kind of throw in here, and if you see me fighting off this fly, that's what it is. This fly. I swear, flies have gotten more and more confident over my lifetime. They have definitely evolved into a greater confidence. They don't worry about me slapping at them at all. But it's always fascinating to me because I guess I got so butthurt about this idea that I had been raised to believe that my church was the only, and I generally say that about 50 times, the only, and then true, and I usually say that about 100 times, church, which in my pride allowed me to believe that there wasn't any other only true church. And when I finally caught on that just wasn't true, it's been so interesting to see all the areas where I thought that I would be amongst the very few that only knew the things that I knew because of belonging to the only true church, and that I wouldn't be sitting on a panel of 4 people who had varying different backgrounds and experiences from me and be basically talking about the same thing. But when I was at BYU, they had a production of a musical that you likely haven't heard of, but you might have, called Saturday Warriors. And it was about the idea that we live in the last, not just the last days of Earth, but we live in the last era, or we live in the last epoch, or whatever it is, of human transformation. So let's take the idea that you and I have been through several lifetimes. We've grown, we've chosen all these little things that we wanted to be, so we knew what it was like to be a whore, and we knew what it was like to be a king, and we knew what it was like to be all these other things. And now we come to the last part of the epic of humanity, and then the next thing we're going to graduate into is, who knows, angels, gods, whatever it might be. And in this one, in Saturday's Warriors, it was so similar to Wayne Dyer's experience. And I did come upon Wayne Dyer very young. Well, not very young, I guess, but when I was first married, before we even had children, my husband, I picked up a book of Wayne Dyer's and given to me, because I now know, even though I wasn't part of the 5 languages gifts discussion, I now know that his thing was giving gifts. And he had figured out that books were my big deal, and in particular, what I could consider, he did not ever consider them the same way, but what I could consider an inspiring book. And Wayne Dyer was always inspiring to me my whole life, or his whole life, I should say. So here I am, a BYU student, sitting there in the audience watching Saturday's Warriors, and there's this drunken sot in the street. And, I don't remember a whole lot about that, but you have to understand that this was well over 45 years ago for me. This is a memory that old for me. And I remember that the message for that part of it was that man, out of his deep love for whoever the other party in that scene was, had decided to play the drunken sot with a miserable life. And so I've had the experience in my own life of learning that it seems pretty likely that I have had an incestuous experience, multiple times with my own relative. I'm not going to portray that or betray that right now on the screen, but from the ages of 2 to 8. And of course, when you're 2 years old, you don't even have a vocabulary. You can't screech out, "Don't rape me, please don't do that, so-and-so that I know and love." You can't even in your head associate verbally what it is that you're experiencing. And I'm guessing that that's probably true at 8 as well as it is at 2. And talk about being afraid to visit my subconscious, while on the other side of it, wanting to visit my subconscious to know, is that really true? Did that really happen? Or am I nuttier than I even have accepted myself as being in this life? So I know we must be really late. I don't even have my clock in front of me like I used to, but I'll let everybody go now, and we'll try and get back on track next week.
I feel like we're always on track. It seems like maybe we're going off track, but we're not. We're covering just what we need to cover at the time. That's what we're here to talk about. So, Dan, Catherine, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up today? No? Okie dokie. Well, it's been a great discussion, guys, and I feel like we really had a great chat today. I mean, we always have a great chat, but sometimes I just feel like it's even more great. I don't know, something, the energy is different or something. I don't know. But anyway, for those of you who are watching this as a recording, leave us a comment below the video, like, subscribe to the channel, jump over to our Facebook group, which is mindsetmastercollective.com. That'll take you directly into the Facebook group, and you can be a member of our community. Ask to join this discussion if you're interested in talking about these things, because we're always talking about something. So with that, guys, have a great, awesome, amazing week, and we will see you next week on the Saturday Morning Mastermind.